Josh here, this is Treksplained. What we're going to do today is talk about the premiere episode of Star Trek Voyager called Caretaker. This Star Trek is one that is most often cited as divisive. It goes back to the Starship plan as compared to the space station plan of Deep Space Nine, but instead of the Enterprise, it's a starship called Voyager. The premise of this is that a Maquis ship goes missing in the Badlands, a place that no Federation starship could navigate, apparently, and Voyager, a Federation starship, is sent to investigate. It starts off with an opening crawl much like Deep Space Nine, which I'll read verbatim in order to get a tiny bit of backstory. Unhappy with a new treaty, Federation colonists along the Cardassian border have banded together, calling themselves the Maquis. They continue to fight the Cardassians. Some consider them heroes, but to the governments of the Federation and Cardassia, they are outlaws. The Maquis were set up in a few episodes of Next Gen, and also with the character of Ensign Ro, and also a two-parter on DS9. Back to the show, we see a Cardassian cruiser blasting away at a tiny little Maquis ship. Inside the ship, we see Chakotay, Tuvok, B'Elanna Torres, and a random worrying about what to do. Gul Evek calls and demands them to surrender. Chakotay hangs up with a scowl. They decide to shut down weapons and reroute power to engines. Gotta be creative. It's the only way they'll make it to the Badlands. They fire the last two photon torpedoes at the Cardassians, which does very little, but successfully makes it into the Badlands. They head into an actual plasma storm, and the Cardassians follow them through, but they got hit and aren't pursuing anymore. The Maquis continue on, but a flash happens, and they state that they passed through a coherent Tetrion beam. A shockwave of sorts catches up with them, and they are all flashed away in a sudden burst of white light. The credits roll, and when we return to a Federation penal colony in New Zealand, we see Tom Paris working on something, and a Catherine Janeway talking to him about serving with his father on the Albatani. She wants him to do a job for her. She tells him about her mission to go find the lost Maquis ship, and they talk about Voyager being able to make it into the Badlands. She tells him that her chief of security was on board, undercover, so this is a rescue mission with a more direct purpose. Tom Paris says, "Well, okay, I'll go, but I should be the pilot." Janeway says no. Paris says, "Okay, I'll go anyway," even though he hates Chakotay. Cut to a shuttle with Paris and a woman named Stadi approaching DS9. Fun fact, the shuttle shows 1701D on it, which of course is the number of the Enterprise. Paris is trying to flirt, but Stadi is shooting him down. Finally, she points out Voyager and gives some stats on it. Intrepid class, sustainable cruise velocity of warp 9.975. 15 decks, crew complement of 141, bioneural circuitry. Neat little ship. They fly by Voyager's front to get a good look at the registry number, NCC 74656. I never remember this one. Doesn't have the same ring as old 1701. Inside Quark's bar, Quark is talking to a new ensign just assigned to Voyager. Ensign Harry Kim, who thinks he's hot stuff and unintentionally insults the Ferengi species as a whole. Tom Paris rescues Harry Kim from the counter of Quark, just when Quark thought he tricked Kim into a sale. And this is the send-off of the previous series to the new one that usually happens, like with Bones on Next Gen or Picard on DS9. The old show usually sends off the new one in some way. Paris and Kim go to the sickbay to check in with the doctor, who doesn't like Paris for some reason. But the medical records are in order, and they go to the bridge to meet up with the captain. Captain Janeway is in her ready room, which is bigger than Picard's, and is talking to her boyfriend or husband or something named Mark. Their doggy is going to have puppies, and they're talking all about that and how hot and bothered Mark makes Captain Janeway. She hangs up with Mark right in time to meet with Paris and Kim. Janeway takes them out to the bridge to show them around, and the first officer is not too keen on Paris either. Lieutenant Stadi from the shuttle is the pilot, and the first officer tells her to lay in a course towards the Badlands. Paris is standing awkwardly nearby. Away she goes. Voyager has disembarked. Later, Paris heads to the mess hall to get some tomato soup. He sees the doctor and first officer talking to Kim and looking over in his direction. Yeah, play it cool, guys. Jeez. Paris goes over to Kim and the other two leave. They told him what was up. Paris had an incident that caused the death of 3 officers and then falsified the reports. But this incident only kicked him out of Starfleet. He stumbled his way into the Maquis because he was looking for a fight. But he was caught on his first assignment and jailed due to being a terrorist. Kim decides they're going to be friends anyway. Just then, Janeway calls Paris to the bridge because they're approaching the Badlands. Paris gets to the bridge, gives a little bit of advice, and then they're able to figure out the course of the Maquis ship that went lost. They head on after it, and then a coherent Tetrion beam scams them. Uh-oh, we know what this means. A displacement wave is heading towards them too, just like the Maquis ship. Red alert, get us out of here, but it's useless. Captain says, brace for impact. Most people do, but the first officer runs like a crazy person and falls down. And they're flashed away too. Next thing we see is a very damaged bridge and half the crew is dead. Casualty reports coming in. Lots of shit happen. There's something out there. What the fuck is it? They get the view screen working and see some sort of space station array. And they're 70,000 light years from where they were. They find the Maquis ship, but there are no life signs. The array is firing energy pulses towards a G-type star, and the doctor and engineer are dead. Wow, Voyager is a mess for sure. Janeway heads to engineering and orders Kim to sickbay. Paris joins him. Janeway is trying to help repair the warp core while Kim and Paris activate the emergency medical hologram. This is a holographic doctor that can only exist in sickbay and should be used only in case of emergencies like this one. He's played by Robert Picardo. He doesn't have the greatest bedside personality, but he knows his shit. Janeway successfully prevents a warp core breach, but gets a call from the bridge saying the array is scanning them. And then people start disappearing. Eventually, only the holographic doctor is left, and he whines that nobody shut him off. The crew find themselves walking onto a farm. There's a lady serving lemonade and sugar cookies. She says to make themselves at home, and the neighbors are coming over. Oh, here they are. An old man starts playing the banjo, and they got a real hoedown going on, while the crew looks thrown off and weirded out. They realize the neighbors are all some sort of holograms, so they split up to look for a holographic projector, and the old lady asks if people want some corn on the cob. She tells Janeway to just relax while they wait. Wait for what? Corn on the cob? Anyone? Tom and Paris are walking around when Harry scans... Oh boy, I'm going to mess up this word. Sporosistine life signs. What? Where? One of the hologram girls tries to block them from going into the barn. They get closer to the back barn door, and they can scan humanoid life signs. The girl gets really angry and says she's not ready for them yet. Then an angry dog shows up. Paris tries to call Janeway, but the girl knocks him out. Janeway answers, but can't get a response, so her and the nearby crewmen run over to the barn. Then the neighbors just appear in the barn angry. Then Janeway shows up from running over. The old lady says since nobody likes her corn, they're going to have to proceed ahead of schedule. The back barn door disappears, and they walk into a type of medical facility. Lots of beds, and the Maquis crew are laying in them. There's a needle sticking out of everyone's chests. Then Starfleet and the holograms disappear. Next thing they know, they're on those beds too, and getting needles stuck in their chests. Harry screams. Later, everyone finds themselves on various floors back on Voyager. They realize they've been gone for 3 days, and the Maquis ship is powering up its engines. All senior officers, whoever is left, to the bridge. Paris tries to locate Harry Kim, but it turns out he's not on board. The doctor asks Paris questions about what happened. The doctor's questions go unanswered. Paris informs Janeway, and Janeway calls the Maquis ship. Hello, Chakotay. They realize that one of their crew is missing too, B'Elanna Torres. They have the same problem. Let's cooperate. 3 Maquis, Chakotay, Tuvok, and a random, beam aboard Voyager with weapons drawn. But that's a precaution. And she greets Tuvok by name. That's the undercover operator. Why, you little... Chakotay thinks Tuvok had help from Paris, but that's just not true. But there is bad blood between them, and they almost come to blows. But Janeway stands up to Chakotay and tells him to shut the fuck up. Janeway decides they're going back, with compression phaser rifles. Paris isn't going to go initially because of the beef with Chakotay, but he convinces Janeway to let him come because he doesn't want anything to happen to his only friend, Harry Kim. So the away team is Janeway, Chakotay, Tuvok, Paris, and the random Maquis. They see the old Banjo Man and go ask him some questions. Tuvok and the random go investigating while the others talk to the old guy. The old guy is annoyed and that they returned and says they don't have what he needs, but Torres and Kim might. He must honor a debt that can never be repaid. But there just isn't enough time left. Not enough time, and he sends them away back to Voyager, much to the surprise of the bridge crew. Kim awakens in a different medical facility, and there are a couple of people talking to them telepathically, asking if they're okay. He tries to get up and sees a growth on his wrist and chest. Torres wakes up more violently and tries to escape, but is restrained, hyposprayed, and put back to sleep. Janeway and Tuvok talk in her ready room about how the pulses the array is blasting out are increasing in frequency. But why? We'll take a look at this, Tuvok. The planet the array is sending energy to is basically a desert, so why is it sending power there? And there are no nucleogenics, which is needed for rain. So there must have been an extraordinary environmental disaster. Once repairs are complete, let's take a look. They talk about Harry Kim for a minute. He left his clarinet behind, and his mom wanted to know if she could send it to him before they launched from DS9, which of course she couldn't. Poor Harry. That's actually the theme of the whole series. Poor Harry. Later, the Maquis ship and Voyager are traveling through a debris field and come across a small vessel with one humanoid on board. This is Neelix, who is initially aggressive with Janeway when hailed because he thinks they're after his junk, but Starfleet doesn't care about such things and he just wants to talk. Oh, in that case, he's delighted to know them. He guesses their story about being whisked away by the Caretaker. Oh, is that what his name is? Caretaker? That's more information than we had before. That's what the Ocampa call him anyway. Ocampa? And that's probably where the missing crew is. With the Ocampa. On the planet that's getting the energy from the Caretaker. They ask for his help in finding the crew members, but he says he's too busy unless they happen to have water. Oh, they have water. All the water you could want. Well, in that case, it sounds like a most reasonable arrangement. They beam him over despite some trepidation from Neelix, who doesn't know what beaming is, and he greets Tuvok in the transporter room. Neelix is overcome with curiosity and questions to which Tuvok tries to avoid and just escorts him to quarters. Harry and B'Elanna talk together in the medical facility when she comes to. B'Elanna has a temper, but Harry talks her down. The doctor comes back and gives them some clothes and said they aren't prisoners. They're actually honored guests. The doctor explains the Caretaker from their perspective. After a huge disaster on the surface, he led them underground and has provided for them ever since. And the growths B'Elanna and Kim have, they've seen them before. Occasionally, the Caretaker sends people there with that disease, but they don't know how to treat it, and people don't live too long after it. Tuvok enters Neelix's quarters, rude, and sees that he's been making use of the food processors and the water. He's taking a bath. Tuvok averts his gaze, but if he hadn't entered Neelix's quarters without asking, he wouldn't have needed to. Tuvok came through to ask Neelix where they should look since they arrived at the planet they were heading to. He tells Tuvok where to scan and get some clothes from the replicator, but not a uniform. You gotta earn that. On the planet, which is a large desert wasteland, the away team beams down. It consists of Janeway, Chakotay, Neelix, Tuvok, and Tom Paris. They see an encampment and begin to walk towards the beings there. Neelix explains that the only reason people are here at all is for mining. There are rich cormalline deposits that are very much in demand. But these are not Ocampa they are here to see. They are the Kazon Ogla. The Kazon are a species that are meant to be Voyager's replacement for the Klingons, but they fall short almost every time. Ogla is like a clan or house of the Kazon. like how Worf is a Klingon belonging to the House of Moog. The Kazon Ogla here do not seem to take too kindly to Neelix. They grab him and rush him off while grabbing the weapons of the Voyager and Maquis crew. Neelix asks to speak with their Maj, the ever-wise Jabin. Maj is basically the leader. Jabin shows up from up above, and Neelix tells him they have brought water to replace all that he had borrowed. Oh, Neelix, you thief. That's why you were asking about water. Paris gives Jabin a water bottle, and then he asks for more. Janeway tells Voyager to beam down 2 full tanks of water, which the Kazon rush over to. They must be thirsty living in a desert. Janeway tells them that they can have more if they help her find the Ocampa. He points at a woman just exiting a doorway and says she is Ocampa, and we are introduced to Kes. Jabin explains that Ocampa live 2 miles below the surface, where the only water on the planet is, and the entity on the array sends them food and power. Janeway is trying to rescue her people, but Jabin says there's no way to get to them. They have tried. There is a subterranean barrier that prevents any access to the Ocampa's area. Just when some progress in help is being made, Neelix holds Jabin hostage with a weapon. Damn it, Neelix, you're ruining everything. The crew gets up and gets their weapons back, and then Neelix blasts the water tanks with his weapon. Well, that sure is a way to make an enemy. The crew and the newly acquired Kes beam back up to Voyager. On the transporter pad, it is made apparent that Kes and Neelix are a couple. This whole thing was a rescue mission put on by Neelix under false pretenses. Under the surface, Harry and B'Elanna are discussing the situation. Harry is optimistic that Janeway is trying to find them. B'Elanna doesn't even know if any of them are even still alive. Pessimist. One of the accompanied doctors comes to bring them a new medicine. B'Elanna accuses her of spying, but that's not what's happening. The doctor gives them a kind of herbal remedy. A moss that grows on a tree seems to have healing properties. It may or may not help with their illness. Couldn't hurt though, right? But Harry says the only thing that'll help is if he can get to his people. The doctor is doubtful, but says the Caretaker has been acting strangely as of late, abducting people and increasing the energy supply. The doctor agrees to help them with finding a way to the surface. In sickbay on Voyager, Tuvok is scolding Neelix. Kes interrupts and says don't blame Neelix. Then the doctor says shut the fuck up everybody. Janeway ends the program and the doctor disappears. Rude. They do that to the doctor a lot through the first 2 or 3 seasons. Whenever they don't want to hear him, they just deactivate him. I'm sure you have people in your life who you would love to do that to. Anyway, Kes says everything is her own fault for going to the surface in the first place. But curiosity is what drives Starfleet, so nobody really takes to that. It's a good quality. Janeway asks if Kes could take them down there, but Kes says the tunnel she came up in was already sealed. Janeway says they could beam down, but Tuvok points out that they couldn't scan a civilization underground before. It could be the Caretaker's barrier is blocking their scans, and who knows, maybe the transporters. Kes suggests there may be other breaches, and so Janeway orders a scan for any possible breaches to beam through. Neelix says that him and Kes are going to leave. Neelix is taking all the credit for the rescue, but Kes points out that without Janeway and crew, it wouldn't have been possible, so Kes wants to stay and help them for now. Later, an away team walks past a vegetable garden and some Ocampa. The Ocampa do a double take like, who the fuck are these people? Obviously, they were able to beam in. Kes runs up to a man and hugs him. She missed him, and then an elder named Toscat begins speaking telepathically, but the crew can't understand him. Kes scolds the elder. Oh, I forgot if I mentioned, but the Ocampa only live 8 or 9 years. Kes isn't even 2 yet, and she's a fully mature woman, so an elder is like 7. Kes blatantly disobeys Toscat and has the Voyager crew follow her to the central clinic. What they don't know is that B'Elanna and Harry are already climbing some stairs to the surface, although they're struggling with it. They take a break, and now Harry is being the pessimist and saying that this is his first mission and he's going to die. They talk about Starfleet Academy and one particular teacher who was always sneezing. B'Elanna made it to the sophomore year before getting kicked out. Then, they hear some electronic pulses become louder and louder. Cut to the Voyager crew members who can hear it too, and then it stops. The array isn't sending out the energy pulses anymore, and it's changing position. The away team splits up. Neelix, Kes, and Paris go in search of Harry and B'Elanna via the tunnels, and Janeway and the rest go talk to the doctors. Then Voyager calls Janeway. The array is firing on the surface of the planet. Looks like it's trying to seal the energy conduits. Tuvok forms a hypothesis. The Caretaker is dying, and he wanted to give the Ocampa a little leg up to last them for a while after he passes. And now he's sealing the conduits so that the enemies of the Ocampa, like the Kazon, can't use them. And the debt that can never be repaid is likely a debt the Caretaker owes to the Ocampa. On a related note, if he dies, how the hell are we supposed to get home? Paris is able to scan Harry and B'Elanna in one of the tunnels, and they go after them. He informs Janeway via communicator. Janeway tries to beam back to Voyager, but it looks like the barrier is sealed, and they can't beam out. So they're heading to the caves. They'll be just behind Paris. Paris finds Harry and B'Elanna sitting on their asses, and they help them head up the stairs. Kes says not to worry, she knows where they can get through the barrier. But wait a minute, didn't Kes say that the way she knows was already sealed up? Liar. They make it through the barrier but can't find an obvious exit. So Paris and Neelix blast one. Ah, daylight. They climb up and are about to beam up when a final blast from the array really messes things up. They lost contact with the other group. Paris and Neelix return to look for them while B'Elanna, Harry, and Kes beam back up to Voyager. Paris and Neelix find the others. Neelix escorts Tuvok and Janeway up, and Paris goes in to get Chakotay. Keep in mind that they hate each other right now. Paris rescues Chakotay, who now owes a life debt to Paris. Not really. Paris makes a lot of stereotypical racist jokes about Native Americans that really wouldn't fly today. Heck, it was even pushing it then. Paris gets Chakotay back up to Voyager, where everyone is in sickbay getting treated. Janeway is called to the bridge. There are 2 Kazon ships heading to the array. Everyone leaves sickbay, and the doctor is frustrated because he's left on. A doctor without patience is a doctor with no patience. Jobin calls from the lead ship and decides he can't let Janeway back on board the array. It would be a challenge to them. What the fuck, man? We're just trying to get home. He rudely hands up and powers weapons. Fine, you want to fight? You'll get a fight. The Kazon begin firing on Voyager, but aren't really doing too much damage. Voyager returns fire. The goal of Voyager and the Maquis are just to hold off the Kazon while Janeway and Tuvok return to the array to find the Caretaker. Janeway and Tuvok split up. Tuvok has a task to accomplish while Janeway talks to the old man again. He doesn't have the strength to send them home at all anymore, and it becomes apparent that the debt that they could never be repaid was that he turned their planet into the desert it now is. They are explorers from another galaxy, but they had no idea their technology would be so destructive to the atmosphere. There were 2 of them chosen to stay behind and care for them, but his mate didn't stay. She left for greener pastures. The illness that people have been getting infected with was actually an incompatibility in their biomolecular pattern. He had been searching for someone to take over for him, but was never able to find one compatible. Janeway suggests to let the Ocampa care for themselves, but the Caretaker says they're children, but children have to grow up. It's the challenge of surviving on their own that helps them to evolve. Voyager calls Janeway. Now there's a bigger Kazon ship, even bigger than Voyager. Actually, it looks like it would be bigger than the Enterprise. Chakotay sees the danger that Voyager is now in and plots to ram the Kazon ship. Hopefully they can beam him out before he's done for. They successfully do so, and the big old Kazon ship is on fire and plummeting towards the array. Tuvok returns to Janeway and says that he can make the array send them back to Federation space, but it might take several hours, unless the Caretaker helps. The Caretaker has set the self-destruct option in order to prevent the Kazon from gaining access to this technology. There's no time to send them home. He pleads with them to leave before it happens. The large flaming Kazon ship rams into one of the arms of the array and sends things all askew in there. The holographic generators go offline, and Janeway and Tuvok are just in a type of corridor. The Caretaker is now an amorphous blob, likely akin to a shapeshifter like Odo. He tells Janeway that the self-destruct program was damaged by that Kazon ship. His final plea is with Janeway to destroy the array, or the Kazon will annihilate the Ocampa. The Caretaker loses mass and shrinks until he turns into a solid rock that can be picked up. Janeway and Tuvok talk about whether they should return to the Alpha Quadrant and allow the Kazon access to the technology and destroy the Ocampa, or to destroy the array, thus protecting the Ocampa for now, but stranding them in the Delta Quadrant. Quite the moral dilemma. But would the needs of a ship outweigh the needs of an entire culture? Janeway and Tuvok return to Voyager, where they're going to use tri-cobalt devices to destroy the array. Janeway hails the Kazon to warn them that they're going to destroy the array. B'Elanna is pissed at this and yells at Janeway, but Chakotay holds her back. Janeway is the captain. With that comes the respect and responsibility of everyone's lives. Janeway orders fire, and the array is destroyed, as well as any possibility of going home in a timely manner. Jabin hails them one final time just to say that they've made an enemy today, but then they withdraw. Later, Janeway is in the ready room when Paris comes in. She wants to talk to him. He tells him that the Maquis crew, who don't like him, will be staying on board and integrate with the rest of the crew. Chakotay will look out for him, though. Also, Chakotay will be the first officer. And Paris, you'll be the lieutenant and con officer. Paris is, of course, happy about this, just surprised. As Paris leaves, Neelix and Kes barge into her ready room. They want to go with her. This isn't a passenger ship, but Neelix successfully sells himself as a guide, so she agrees. One final speech by Captain Janeway, and Voyager is ready to depart, on course to the Alpha Quadrant, but exploring along the way as the only Starfleet vessel in the Delta Quadrant. It might be a 75-year journey home unless they find shortcuts, but they'll find a way back. Voyager raises her nacelles and warps away to the future. Thanks for tuning in. If you liked today's story, please drop a like and subscribe so you get updates on new ones. See you next time on Treksplained.